Welcome back at last, listeners. Thank you for tuning in to episode 20. We've already hit 20 episodes, which is pretty amazing. And this is season 2 of our podcast. So if you are listening for the first time, I really recommend that you go all the way back to our first episode, or just catch up on where we've been in this season of life. And this is a podcast that my friend Megan and I started really thinking about over a year ago. And really our heart behind it is just to share with the next generation, and with the older generation as well, share the truths of God's word, of what it means to be a faith-filled person as we follow God in this life. And so we talk about different discussions and topics and subjects that are not always hit on or not always talked about, but that we can share God's light and God's truth on. And so you may just hear my voice and think, where's Megan? As some of you may know, Megan is currently in Honduras on a mission trip. So she's out, and she gave me the permission as my co-host to look for a guest to invite onto the podcast for this episode and possibly the next. So I do have a special guest joining me today, and it's actually my mom. Say hi, Mom.
Hello, everyone.
She's a little nervous, so just listen with joy and prayers as we begin this conversation. But there are a couple reasons why I wanted to invite her onto this episode specifically. And so I'll share a few of those. So I wanted to interview my mom, firstly, because I grew up hearing such interesting stories of her life and her upbringing, how my grandparents greatly impacted her faith, which impacted my faith. And I've always wanted to tell the world that beauty of generational faith and how it hits so close to home. And I feel that this subject of having faith that lasts through the generations, I just feel that this is right now a time that a lot of young people are hungry for God and want to see transformation in their lives. I just really feel like right now we're in a time that people just need answers and they just need hope. And so I think that it's just a great example to see and to hear about people that have had faith over a very long time. Another thing is that a lot of you listening know me very well. You may know a lot of my story and the ministries that I'm a part of, but you don't really know the powerful ways that God has been so faithful through my family that really made me who I am today. And so I'm really excited to talk about faith for the next generation and what that really means. And so I've asked and prepared my mom to share a couple of stories about our family, and the things that also she's experienced and been through. And a lot of it, I was trying to encourage her and tell her a lot of this people really have no idea the kinds of things that God can do through hardship and through different experiences, because nowadays we're so filled with luxury and just, a fast-paced world that has so much convenience that a lot of people don't know how to even comprehend real hardship. And so thank you for being here, and thank you for saying yes to having this conversation. Are you excited?
Yes, so I'm excited to share, and I appreciate your choosing me to be part of your podcast story.
Yeah.
Today. So yes.
Yeah. All right. So let's start by sharing a little bit about your parents, my grandparents, and just kind of lay the foundation. Let's get us a picture, a story of where they came from and kind of the background that they had, how their faith kind of began.
So my parents, my father, he grew up in Mission, Texas. And when his father passed away, he was just 17. And he was sent to live with his older brother in Dallas. And so he moved over there. And while he was there in Dallas, I guess through the times, you know, he saw a young girl that was outside sweeping the porch. And he met her. He asked to meet her. And so that and that lady or girl ended up being my mother. But she was quite young at that time. She was like 15. And they were friends. And he had just been sharing with her his pain and his sorrow that, you know, what had happened, that he lost his father and how he was uprooted from his home life and mission. You know, he was very active in sports and football, track, and he was sent to live in Dallas. So he wasn't happy, but they became friends, and over some time, well, I guess they fell in love. I would think back then, like, you know, she opened her heart and listened to him. So they ended up getting married. They got married, and they realized that I guess within a year they were expecting my oldest sibling. And
how many is it total?
So there's 5. We're 5 siblings. And so you're talking about back in the 1950s.
Yeah, nowadays that's like, oh my gosh, that's a lot of kids.
Yeah, so 1950s. And, you know, through him, I guess he didn't have a job. And so I think what had happened was that my uncle or someone talked to him about if he joined the military, that he would be... his family would be helped. So he signed up for the Air Force. And with that, so they moved. They ended up going to first Alaska. And so they were very young. And, well, actually, she stayed in Dallas. She stayed back... No, sorry, correction. She stayed in Mission with his family while he was in the Air Force. So he was writing letters to her. And she was staying with, I think, his sister.
While she was raising...
She was raising my first brother, my oldest one. And so he was sending, you know, the money, and so that she could buy the things that they needed. But over time, he decided that it was best if she went where he was stationed, and that was Alaska. And that's in Alaska. So they didn't have any family there. But they were together. So I feel like back then, like their bond together of being together was each other. You know, so my father's background was Catholic. He wasn't very involved, but he was young. But all his side of the family, his siblings, they were Catholic. My mother, her background was Baptist. So my grandparents' roots were Baptist. And she would share stories when she was a little girl that my grandfather would get them all ready for church. She came from a big family. I believe they were 10.
Oh my goodness.
And so my grandmother had passed away before I was born. So I never got to meet her. But my grandfather, he supplied for his family, and the siblings all helped raise the younger ones. But she shared with me how, since they were very little, that they would get ready from the day before for church. They would shine their shoes. They had, and they would get their clothes ready. And he would prepare their envelopes so they could give their money that they were going to give that next day in church. And it was just a coin. Like, remember that she said it was like 10 cents. And so that, I didn't find out about these stories till I was, an adult later, how their background of my grandparents were always praying. When you pray for your children, you're also praying for their future children, which are your grandchildren and the next generations. We pray for them to be under God's protection and God's favor always. So they lived in Alaska, where they made few friends. And then he was, so my second sibling, my brother, he was born in Alaska. But they moved around a lot because I think my dad was stationed in several places. So myself, I was born in Dallas, myself and my next sibling, my sister. So we did live in Dallas after that for some time. And those were the years where I might have been 4 or 5 years old. I remember being there in Dallas with my parents, and my mother worked. Also, I believe my mom had several jobs since she was very young. She also helped provide for the family. She worked in clothing factories. And in the mornings, she would get us ready. I remember she would drop me off at the babysitter's house. And I can remember I was 5 years old. She would dress me. I had to wear corrective braces on my feet, like corrective to walk, for walking, because when I was a baby, I didn't crawl correctly. I crawled on one side, so that made my foot go inward.
We gotta teach Robin that.
And so, yes. So there's a few pictures where I'm 5 years old.
So you were like Forrest Gump, and then you grew up to be a runner, and everybody knows you to be
yes,
this amazing runner.
But my I remember my mother would get me ready every day to go to the babysitters, and she had to. They dropped off my brothers at school. So as the years went by, we lived in Dallas, and after my sister was born, she was still a baby. We lived in Dallas. We ended up moving again. We moved to California. My father, we had relatives there in California. So during the time that we were living in Dallas, we would travel. We would travel to California to visit our relatives. We would travel to Mission to visit relatives also. But we never really had a place that we were settled down at. And in those places, we would just either, I guess, we rented houses. And my mother continued working, and my father, he no longer continued in the Air Force. He had a honorable discharge because of a disability that he had. So he's the one that stayed home with us when we were young or sent us to school, and my mother continued working. for those years. But when I finished elementary in California, elementary school, up until 6th grade, everything seemed pretty good then. But things started changing for me when I became a teenager.
Well, so you said that, growing up, like they had those different backgrounds. How did it blend into y'all becoming, Christians? Because you said that Grandpa was more Catholic. So
So I remember a few times during when I was before a teenager that we would visit the Catholic Church, but it was just random because we were not really attending a church. Of course, back then you're a child, you don't really know. You just know you go and sit in those big benches, and everybody's repeating these prayers that are just said repetitively over and over. But some of them were mostly in Spanish. So I really didn't start finding out about a change until I was a teenager. That there was a different church that we could go to. And that's when my parents were attending a church in Mission that was a Christian church. But before that, when we moved to Austin, and that's when things were starting to change for me. But we still weren't attending a church. Later on, I found out as an adult that where I saw the background was on my mother's side, because I believe that my grandfather, he was a deacon at the Baptist church for many years there, and my aunts and uncles were very actively serving in the church. My aunts had beautiful voices, and they sang with the choir. They all had these musical gifts. So I believe that the
foundation was there.
Yes.
And you grew up hearing those stories from your from your mom.
Yes.
About the family, like basically like traditions, like it was tradition. It was get up in the morning, get ready for church. So looking back over your life, even because you said that you all weren't like attending a church, and then you bounced around so many different places, so it was even harder, I think, to be settled in a place, and then you have your church, your family. Like you didn't have that, you didn't grow up having that. So I feel like that foundation was there, but it wasn't really your faith yet. So looking back over your life, were there times that you felt like, well, even though I wasn't really following God, like in a full way, I know he was still watching over us. I know he was still very much in my life. Do you have moments like that you could share?
Yes. I believe through the background with that my mom had on her side, that they wouldn't miss any church, and she saw what she saw growing up. It instilled that faith in her, and I believe that since all the hardships that my parents faced, I believe that they prayed and they asked God to help them, because they really weren't around family a lot every time they moved around. So when we moved to Austin, I was in middle school. So I was already probably 13 years old. And that's when, so my parents purchased their first home, and we got a property on the rural outside of Austin, called Del Valley. near Austin. And so it was a brand new subdivision. There weren't a lot of trailer homes out there. It was a trailer home. And I was enrolled in another school, so it was a lot of schools for me. But the bus would pick us up at the end of at the road. But we'd walk probably half a mile to our house. So it was a pretty far walk. And it was just, it wasn't even a paved road yet. There were only very few houses out there. We did have a neighbor across the street that was in high school, him and his sister and his father and mother. But I was in middle school, so he used to joke around. We used to play ball, like baseball. And one time we were playing out there. It was my brother and my neighbor. Oh, he was in high school. He was already maybe in high school. I was still in middle school, and he was joking around. But he would tell me, like, I was pitching the ball, and he told me, "Oh, I'm gonna hit you in the nose, so that when you go to school tomorrow, you're gonna have a big nose." And he was really kidding, but boys, they're much stronger than girls, and I was pitching the ball to him. My brother was on the outfield. It was just us three. And I heard, how when they hit the ball, it sounds like a crack on with the bat. So when I heard that noise, I turned back because I thought the ball had passed me. It was getting a little bit dark, but not quite. So when I turned back to look back, because I thought the ball had gone past me, and when I turned forward, the ball actually hit me in my left eye, and I was knocked out. And so my older brother was there, and he put me in the car immediately, rushed me to the emergency, and he drove like, I'm sure he was breaking all the speeding limits. Yeah. Because we're on the outside of Austin. We went all the way to the main hospital in Austin. He had a customized car that he had customized, a 57 Ford. Well, there were no seats in the back because he had made it like flat with carpet and everything. So I was just rolling around back there. But I remember that he was not stopped. And it was just he and myself and him. Because my mother wasn't home. She was at the store with my sister. My youngest sibling, we left him there at the house with that young man that hit me in the eye. And my brother told him, well, and you just watch him. So I was there at the emergency, and I could feel that the doctors were opening my eye like far away because I had this huge thing. But after they checked me very good, and they called my parents, my mother, my dad was out of town. The doctor told my mother that it was very close, that if I had been hit in the temple, that I would have died. Oh my gosh. So that's when things started turning around when I was a teenager, that, then I didn't realize that God was protecting me for the plan for my life, for the rest of my life. That was the first major thing that happened there. So I had to go to school with a patch on my eye for a couple of weeks. And eventually it healed, and I ended up having still 20/20 vision. Praise the Lord.
Wow, and then I have 20/20 vision.
Yes. So I feel like God was not only there every time for us and our family. We were brand new there. We were working the yard. We were fixing up the place. That was our own. We didn't have a storage to put anything, so my dad was building a storage next to our trailer home. It was going to be pretty big, just to store our things. And so one night, how there's always storms and going up the country. it was raining and raining, and it was hailing, and it was just a bad storm. I remember being in my bedroom by the window, and I remember telling myself, I'm just going to sit here until the storm passes. But that didn't happen because my dad, he was telling us to all go to the middle part of the house, which is the kitchen. So my mother, she was wanting to go take a bath, and he's trying to get her out of the restroom, come over here. So he put us all in the middle, but he never told us what was going on. And I just saw him taking out pots and pans from the middle of the kitchen, and he put my sister, my two siblings, probably 8 and 5. He put them under there. And that's when I started getting a little bit worried that something was going to happen because the rain, and of course on a trailer home, you can really hear all the noise and the hail and the noise. But I still didn't know that what was coming. And he had heard on the transistor radio that we had at that time, just the radios that you put batteries in, that there was a tornado near our subdivision. But he didn't tell us. He never said anything. He just told us that we needed to get in the middle. And so I was sitting in the kitchen floor with my brother and my parents. He already had secured my sister and my little brother. And then, so we felt like something was pulling our home out of the ground. When you move out there with your homes, you can choose to have your home, they put these metal straps around to anchor it down. So we had the anchors. But some people's homes are just sitting there. Yeah. They can just get picked up. But we could hear this noise of something was yanking our home out of the ground. So it was pretty scary. We just were looking at each other. But again, my dad didn't tell us, but we knew. I knew that this wasn't good. And what I thought was, I said, okay, something's pulling our home out of the ground. It was raining pretty bad. And it pulled our home out of the ground. But I said, okay, we're just going to roll over on one side. And that's what happened. Our house rolled over, face up to like where the door up to the sky. I said, and that's going to be it. We're going to be fine. But as soon as that happened, the tornado took out the whole front wall, and now the water came in, and then everything was turning in circles like a cigar, like rolling, and all this water came in. So I never really saw anybody. I could just hear my mother screaming, and she was screaming for my siblings. She said that she could see them holding hands in the air, but she couldn't reach them. And oh my gosh. I could hear them screaming, but I didn't. I don't know, like maybe I was in shock. I don't remember being hit on the head, but I was. So I had got hit on the head with a heavy metal cooking frying pan, those ones that are like iron. But I didn't know at the time. Then when everything stopped, I could hear them calling my name. I could hear my brother calling my name, and they were looking for me, but I wasn't answering. But I was awake. I don't know why I wasn't answering. I think that maybe I was just in shock, or I got hit on the head, but I was covered with a blanket. And he saw my hand, and he pulled me out. They thought they had lost me. They thought the worst, because they all found each other, but they couldn't find me. So after that, we all got into, we were just in that little cubby hole that my dad put us in. That's what was really left in the kitchen. The rest of the house was all squished. The metal frame of the trailer on both ends in the bedroom where I said I was going to be waiting the storm out by the window was all crushed with the mattresses and everything. So we were just in that little kind of like a U-shape area. And my mother was very panicked. It was still raining and ugly, and she wanted to run out. And my dad told her, no, you stay right here. And she wanted to go because she thought that the tornado was going to come back. Shortly thereafter, we heard somebody calling out for our family. It was a neighbor. He had a cast on his leg. Well, he knew that we had little children because he had a little boy. And he lived across the street from us. And he came out in the field. He broke his cast. He came out to call for us. And he says, hey, is everybody okay? Anybody there? We said, yes, we're here. So he helped us cross through the field. We were barefooted. My father didn't have a shirt on. We were all barefooted. We went through the tall grass. He was bringing us to his home. So we were there. No one had electricity. And I was there. And then him and I think it might have been my dad, they went to look for my neighbor, the one that had hit me in the eye with a baseball.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So they went to look for his family, and they found my neighbor, the young man. They found him. He was almost drowning in the ditch. So they were scattered. Their family were scattered because their home wasn't anchored down. So they brought him. He was in shock. He wasn't talking much. And then they went to look for his mother and his sister. Her boyfriend had been visiting with the sister there at the home. And so they brought the mother, and I believe she was in shock because she wasn't talking much either. But they brought his sister and the boyfriend. The boyfriend was unconscious, so they laid him on the sofa, and he was just like asleep. But when they brought the sister, she had this huge gash on her thigh, and it was pretty deep. So at that point, they knew they needed to get her to the emergency. No phones at the time. We didn't have cell phones back then. We couldn't get a hold of emergency. Everything was down. But there was a lady that also lived across the street, and she was a coach. She came over and she offered to take us in her station wagon to the naval base. It was right there in Austin. There's a naval base there that had help to get us help. So I went, and my dad, because I had that big lump on my head when I had got hit, and they also took the neighbor, the girl. Well, I remember that they couldn't help the neighbor because she was underage and her parents weren't with her. But I remember that she had a big gash on her leg, and eventually they got help back to the house, and they were able to help the boyfriend when he had protected her body with his back. So when they picked him up from the sofa, they saw that he had a gash on his back. Well, both of them were in the hospital. I think she was in the hospital for like 3 months. They had a long recovery. But going back, we can see now that God spared our lives. He saved us. He had a plan that none of us would perish. It wouldn't have been the same if we would have lost one of us. There were 6 of us. And so we lost everything. We We didn't have our home or belongings. My dad's cousin that lived in the Austin area, he came and picked us up that night, and we went and we stayed at his place for one night only. And the next day, I believe the Salvation Army helped us and made it possible for us to stay at a motel. It was like a house, and the bus would pick us up there, and we would go to school. We stayed there probably a month. I didn't tell you that God also saved my cat. My cat survived the tornado. I was freaking out when we got to the neighbors, and I remembered about my kitty, and I was in pretty bad shape because I love cats so much. I thought she had died. But the next day that we went back to the trailer, it was in the mud and everything. She was still in the trailer. So we took her to the motel with us. But so we didn't have a home. The people that had sold us the trailer, my dad was pretty upset. He went to their place. He told them what had happened, and he told them that he told them, well, if I had known that these trailers were made with 2x2s, I would never have bought this home. You know, they weren't made with 4x4s. They offered to give us another home, and he turned them down. He didn't want another trailer. But the coach that had lived across the street, she had like a barn. She offered to let us stay in that barn. So we moved into the barn, which was across from our property. And my dad turned that storage room that he was building, he turned it into our bath. And that's where we would go across the street, take our bath over there, and then we lived across in the barn.
In Bethlehem.
Yes. But I think that my parents, you know, their will to be strong and to see what God did for us, that God saved us, they never gave up. We're a big family. They found a way for us to have everything that we needed, that God supplied our needs. He took care of us. You know, we had, I had one pair of pants that my mom bought us at Kmart because the Salvation Army only gave her a little bit of money. You know, the next day after the tornado that we went back, everything was in the mud. So I believe that they washed a lot of our things, and we had some clothes. But the main thing where I remember that she was very hurt was that all the memories, you know, our photographs that were in the mud. They got all our photographs out, and to this day we still have pictures that have the mud stains on the back from the tornado. But one thing was that while we were staying at the motel, my younger two siblings were having nightmares. Every time it rained, they would wake up crying. They were traumatized. They kept screaming and crying that the tornado was going to come back and get them. So my parents made the decision that we needed to move and not live there anymore. And that's when we moved to the Rio Grande Valley.
Wow.
And we moved to, I believe we moved to Harlingen. We weren't all the way in Mission yet. So I was still in different schools. I had to start over, and I was very quiet and shy. I felt like I didn't have a lot of friends, but I didn't have any friends from every time we were moving. So I started in a new school there in Harlingen, and I guess I was just there for the one, not even a couple of semesters. And then after that, we moved again. So we moved to Mission.
Yay! That's the grandma's house that I grew up at and everything. And I think we're gonna need a part 2 to this episode, because I want to hear how those memories and experiences that you had a small part to play in your faith and believing that God is real, that God saves. And so I want to hear how that faith became your faith, and then how you put it into your kids and your family to have that strong foundation. And a sneak peek, y'all know, because we've talked about it before, that I've gone to go work at Camp Zephyr through BT. So there's a little connection there as well that I didn't know until I became an adult, that my mom had a little experience at Camp Zephyr as well when she was younger. So there's things like that, those connections, those things that God puts in our lives for a reason. So come back for part 2 as we hear now the second half, the second portion of the rest of my legacy and how I became who I am today because of my mom and her faith. Thanks for listening.
Yes. Thank you.